Good evening. Welcome to Athens City Council. Tonight is Monday, September 19th, 2005. This evening, City Council is meeting in regular session. We do have a quorum with 6 of 7 members present. Reports and communications from other elected officials or communications. Member Patterson.
Mr. President, I move to adopt the auditor's monthly report for August.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the monthly reports from the auditor's office. Is there further discussion? The month you are adopting is
August.
All those in favor of adopting the reports?
Aye.
Those opposed? The reports have been adopted. Reports and communication from other elected officials. Member Bain.
Okay. This week we were in receipt of a letter from the Awards Committee of the American Planning Association. It seems that our comprehensive plan was chosen as the winner of a comprehensive planning small jurisdictions category in the Ohio Planning Association's Planning Awards program, which is a very nice thing to have happened. And the award will be given on the 30th of September.
Very good. Thank you.
Now all we do have to do is get it adopted.
Just one more small.
The professionals think it's good anyway.
Also, I am in communication of communication from the Athens County Commissioners regarding the Hillcrest annexation. And this shows that the Board of Commissioners has approved the annexation and released the Hillcrest property. At this point, this will lay in the City Council's office for 6 days, at which point we will take it up as a motion and either approve or reject the annexation. Let's see, are there other member, or Mayor Abel, any reports tonight? Sure. Always a report from our good mayor.
In the Parks and Recreation Department, one of the things that we're going to be doing some changes on is the rental fees in the facility of the community center. In October, that'll be 5 years that the facility will have been open. The changes are mostly impacting in the multi-purpose rooms and the subdivisions of that. We're going up $1 or $10 per hour on our rental prices there, but there's 3 different categories. One is if a member that's already in our membership rents it, that's a lower price than a non-member or a business. And then we have a slightly another rate for nonprofit organizations. So we'll still maintain that 3-tier rate structure, but we will be implementing that October 1st. We're also reviewing a couple of areas that for those that already rent from us, such as United Seniors or the Senior Club, when they do functions on the weekend. Right now the lease doesn't address that, but there's a feeling, since that could potentially knock out rentals, especially if it's reserved a long time in advance, that we should look for at least the lowest rate that we charge as compensation for that. We also want to renegotiate the Tri-County Community Action Agency's nutrition lease, because that's one that has not been increased for 5 years, and it's time. We were also in the midst of the review of membership dues, because again, 5 years have elapsed, inflation and costs of operation have continued to grow. We feel that we're kind of at a plateau in the membership from the standpoint of numbers of people. 5 years is an adequate time to discover whether you want to be a member or not. So we're going to be looking at that for a change the first of the year. So wanted to report those items. I believe the ordinances as written are adequate, that we have the authority to do that, but I wanted council to be aware of it. The other thing I wanted to just, in essence, make myself available if there are any questions with regard to the response to the street fires that have happened, except for this weekend this year. I know there's been a lot of media on it, and I'm sure all the council members are fairly well up, but rather than regurgitating all of that, I thought I'd just, if any of you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to try to answer those.
How many fires total?
6.
Do you have a copy?
3 each weekend, or
Yes,
all in the public right away?
yes. And on different streets. Not all of them on different, some of them have reoccurred on the same street or an intersection of that, but it wasn't just one location.
And they're all couches, or what are they mostly?
Oh, I didn't
Oh.
inspect them from that stand. I think it could be chairs, could be, or couches. I mean, there was one like on North High Street. I drove, that was a couch. And I did drive by that one the day after it happened.
Is that the one that was sitting around on Carpenter?
Could have been moved on around that way.
Okay.
Yeah. When I saw it, it was on high.
By the berm.
Okay.
Questions for the mayor?
Thank you.
Mayor Abel. City auditor? No report. Law director Hunter?
No report, Mr. President.
Just a executive session later. Ordinances for second reading. Ordinance 8105, an ordinance vacating approximately 8/10 of an acre of East Union Street from University Terrace to Stewart Street to Ohio University. Member Sand.
Yeah, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we consider an amendment to 08105.
Second.
Last, 2 weeks ago, we amended this ordinance to include some language that fits in. The vacation is granted with the understanding that a public utility easement will be retained by the city. We added something about a pedestrian easement also. It's been the advice of the law director that there is no such thing as a pedestrian easement. If we want to, so we need to take that out. If we want to put some restriction in about the use of this land would be for pedestrian use only, he suggests a section 2. City Council is vacating this portion of East Union Street to provide an alternative to motor traffic, and with the understanding that Ohio University desires to create the street area into a pedestrian walkway.
We have a motion and a second to amend ordinance 8105. Further discussion on the amendment only. Member Weil.
Gary, I have a question in terms of, there's no such thing as a legal pedestrian easement. Is there a vehicular easement? I mean, in theory, if you have a driveway and,
The vacation ordinance, Paul, talks in terms of reserving only utility easements. It doesn't talk in terms of reserving a pedestrian easement.
and that's
Maybe
within respect to vacating the
Right
street?
away. Street right away.
Okay.
Further discussion. Do we have anything in writing on exactly how you would like to?
Yes, I was reading the law director's
Okay.
suggestion.
And that has been provided to the clerk.
Yeah.
Is there any council members that would like to see that? Further discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of amending 08105 as stated?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been amended and read for the first time. 08405, an ordinance amending ordinance 0305 authorizing structural repairs at the Columbus Road Fire Department. 08505, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a revised contract with the Athens City County Health Department. 08605, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a subordination agreement for the city's mortgage with Sean Arno for real estate located at 49 Pomeroy Road.
Mr. President,
Member Sands.
I move that we consider 08605 under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Excuse me, we introduced this ordinance at the last council meeting. Mr. Arno took advantage of the city's mortgage down payment assistance program, which puts us in second position on the mortgage. He's hoping to refinance this mortgage. In fact, he wanted to refinance it back in July as we went on break. So we asked him to postpone this for a while. He does need to complete this refinancing in as timely a manner as possible, so we'd like to make that possible by passing this tonight.
We have a motion and a second to consider ordinance 8605 under suspension of council rules. Is there further discussion on suspension of the rules only? All those in favor of suspending the rules?
Aye.
Those opposed? The rules have been suspended.
Mr. President, I move adoption of 08605,
Second.
what we just talked about.
Okay. Is there further discussion on the ordinance? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 8605?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 8705, an ordinance to rezone the Green Hill subdivision to an R1 zone. Ordinances for first reading, 8805, an ordinance amending the 2005 appropriation ordinance. Member Weil.
Okay, this is as you can see, amending the appropriation ordinance. What it covers is the Ohio Avenue sidewalk for about 22, and the other 20 is for money we didn't cover for a dump truck, I believe. They were kind of blended together. We discussed the 22 last Finance Personnel Committee. Why it doesn't define both of them, I guess that's the way it was written up. And Dale would probably know better than I.
Further discussion? Oh, okay. 8905, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with the Board of Athens County Commissioners for the purpose of obtaining the services of the Public Defender's Office through June 30th, 2006. Who would speak to this in lieu of Member Tamke? Where are you pointing to? I think you've been volunteered, Member Bain.
Debbie, I think.
Oh, it was David.
Oh, Debbie, I'm sorry. Member Phillips.
This ordinance just authorizes the contract for the Public Defender's Office. This is something that we do regularly to provide legal representation for folks who require it.
Is there further discussion on ordinance 89?
And the amount?
The amount is $122,151.68.
I think
Member Weil.
I think Dale said that went up 10% from last year.
I'd be surprised if it was less. Is there further discussion? Ordinance 9005, an ordinance declaring certain equipment no longer needed for a municipal purpose and declaring an emergency. Member Patterson.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rules on 9005.
Second.
The reason for the suspension is because in order to have no break-in service concerning the Packard truck, that's the one that is time sensitive. There's also an emergency clause on this ordinance.
Is there further discussion on suspension of the rules only? All those in favor of suspending the rules on ordinance 9005?
Aye.
Those opposed? The rules have been suspended.
Mr. President, I move to adopt 9005.
Second.
This is an ordinance just to make it possible for the city to sell a 1996 Packard truck, a Harley Davidson motorcycle, and a church organ. How is that for a nice combination? It's as simple as that, to make it possible to sell these things.
Now, here we may even do it on eBay.
Mr. President.
Yes.
And
Member
I'd
Bain.
like to clarify that the reason why we are selling the Packard truck is we retain title to, in our ordinance and in our negotiation to the Packard truck, so that should the county service go out of business, we could pick it up with the truck. And so that's why we have to go through this. And I forgot to mention it last week during my honing on to Jim's committee, but that's basically it. And so they'll use it as a trade-in, and then we'll be on to the next new truck, but it's always ours to take back, should they fold.
And I believe the Church organ came with the Arts West building.
It did.
And I believe the Harley Davidson was something that was.
Didn't come with Arts West.
Nothing to do with the church.
As surprising as all of us find that, was that not something that was taken in through the police department for, I guess I'm sorry.
Compensation.
Okay. Yeah, we do not have that around for city council use. Okay. Is there further discussion on ordinance 9005? All those in favor of adoption of the ordinance?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. 09105, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an agreement for the extension of city water services beyond the corporate limit on Peach Ridge Road and authorizing the installation of a tap. Member Bain.
Mr. President, the City Council has a set of rules that applies to requests for water service outside our corporate limits. We already have in the books an larger charge, but in addition to that, rather than trying to compete, we require, as you can see in the whereases, that the city water line would have to be in the road already. We won't be adding infrastructure outside the city limits, that there's no existing water line or service available from a rural system, that the provision of a water tap does not prevent and should not be deemed to replace the annexation, and it should not be, and should we decide to give all of these over to Sunday Creek, the tap would not stand in the way of that. The line has been tested and found capable of meeting the minimum pressure, and it's only allowed for single residential domestic taps, and that's the framework in which we are going to enter into an agreement with Karen Bald to extend city water service beyond the corporate limit on Long Peach Ridge Road. We talked about it in committee last week, but I thought it would be good to go over the whereases so people don't think that we are just doing this willy-nilly.
Is there further discussion on ordinance 9105? Member Weil.
Okay, also, section 3 points out there is a 10% difference.
Okay.
So they're
Greater. 10%.
greater, yes.
Greater,
10%
yes.
more, you get charged more for being outside the city.
Okay, good.
Other comments? Ordinance 9205, an ordinance granting variances from the Athens City subdivision regulations to Michael and Connie Moritz for property located outside the corporate limit but within the 3-mile jurisdiction to allow a minor lot split and declaring an emergency. Member Sands.
Mr. President, as the ordinance explains, this is a lot which is not in the city of Athens, but the city has jurisdiction within a 3-mile radius. Mr. Moritz is asking for this variance, and he explained the situation to us in committee last week. The ordinance suggests that we grant the variances asked with some conditions. The variances are a variance from the requirement of 90 feet of road frontage. There are only 57 feet on this particular lot. And a variance from the requirement to have a frontage on a public road. The road that services this lot will be a private road. The conditions that are attached are that the neighbors would approve of this lot split and understand that we will not permit any future lot splits off of this same road. A road maintenance agreement shall be established, and it will contain a 50-foot easement for future public utilities, and that the health department approve of this. All those conditions have been met. We have records of that in our file.
Are there further comments on ordinance 9205? 09305, an ordinance authorizing construction of a new restroom facility at Southside Park. Member Patterson.
Mr. President, this ordinance comes about because we have received a NatureWorks grant, which it took us a couple of years to get, but to construct new bathrooms for the Southside Park. And the figures that we discussed in committee have changed slightly because the proposed budget or possible budget came in to the mayor's office. It was a little bit higher, and especially because when we went through the Highland Park restroom scenario, we had to go back twice because the bids, everything that came in was too high. So this ordinance is for $60,000 from capital improvements. $20,800 of that will be repaid to CAP when the NatureWorks grants comes in.
Further comments?
Question.
Member Sands?
Does this replace the old restrooms back by the softball fields, or is it adding a new one up front? I don't remember. In the front part.
A new location, and you have a little drawing there. So you see, and it will be separate men's and women's. This is our most heavily used park, other than the community center area. So it is very heavily used, and this will be greatly appreciated.
Member Phillips?
And I would add that in the Recreation Committee discussions of this, they talked about the fact that the existing restrooms there are built more like for a private home than for the amount of use that park gets. This is something that's really been needed there for a long time.
Other comments? Ordinance 9405, an ordinance approving the amended solid waste management plan of the Athens Hocking Solid Waste District. Member Bain?
Mr. President, last Friday, the Solid Waste District met and went over what EPA bounced back to the Solid Waste District concerning our plan. They wanted some additional information about what we're doing, and so we provided that in amendment, which I hope I put on the desk back there, but if I didn't, I'll go out to my car and get it right after this. A series of remedies were made, and so this will be the amendments. If we pass this, it'll be okay with the EPA, and we can proceed under House Bill 592.
Further comments? Ordinance 9505, an ordinance amending ordinance 07905, closing a portion of Union Street from Court Street to College Street for an alternative fuel car show during Ohio University's Energy Awareness Week and declaring an emergency. Member Weil?
Okay, this is amending the 7905, which we passed last time, and I think I suspended rules on the second reading of that. We first introduced it the July 18th, I believe. It sat there for a month. We suspended it so we could get it in a timely manner for the October 6th date. That's the only thing we put on that particular ordinance. What you're seeing here is that I got an email sometime late Friday from the gentleman who's organizing it saying we were talking about Thursday and Wednesday, the 5th. So I have to amend this and go back into it. You can see we've added a emergency clause to it, and I'll probably, if I understand, I can probably do this at the second reading. I will suspend rules at that time.
Okay.
Again, the alternative would be to, I don't know, have an emergency and have them close the roads anyway, have the service safety director do that. I want to find out more of how it slipped through the cracks.
Yeah,
That's
it
what
has
the-
an emergency clause on it.
I know if you're gonna be adopting it, it's like 2 days or 3 days. In your next meeting, October,
Third or
Third.
fourth, yeah.
does that allow planning time enough to?
I assume he's rolling right along.
It's been advertised.
What if you don't do it?
Well,
So I plan to suspend rules on that on the second reading, just so I can talk to the fellow who's doing it and making sure it's not a shifting sand situation. Also, I want to jump back for a second. 8805, I'll probably suspend rules on as well. That's the appropriation one, first reading. On the second reading, I'll do that. Just to be able to keep my record well blemished.
Okay. Is there further comments on 9505? Now to resolutions for second reading. Resolution 0805, a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor.
Mr. President,
Member Phillips.
I move to suspend the rules on R 0805.
Second.
The reason for the suspension is that we have to get this back to the county auditor so that they can complete that process.
Okay.
We have a deadline to meet.
We have a motion and a second to consider Resolution 0805 under suspension of council rules. Further discussion on suspension. All those in favor of suspending the rules?
Aye.
Those opposed? The rules are suspended.
Mr. President, this resolution,
Move to adopt.
oh, I move to adopt our 0805.
Second.
This resolution is related to property taxes. There's a portion of property taxes that are inside mills that are not voted on, and each taxing jurisdiction, the schools and the county and the township and cities get a portion of that. This is a resolution setting forth our justification for our portion of that inside millage.
Further discussion. All those in favor of adoption of Resolution 0805?
Aye.
Those opposed? The resolution has been adopted. Announcements and other business.
Mr. President.
Member
Patterson.
Patterson.
Mr. President, I move to remove from the table 06905, the Halloween vending ordinance.
Second. There you go.
Okay.
He's got to read it. This is third reading.
Ordinance 6905 is being removed from the table at third reading. The ordinance states, an ordinance suspending the enforcement of Athens City Code, Chapter 11.04, vending, peddling, and soliciting to allow vending in a designated area on October 29th and 30th, 2005. We have a motion and a second to remove from the table. Is there further discussion on removing the ordinance from the table? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been removed from the table.
Mr. President, I move to amend 06905 to add the words in Section 3 after Safety Director, B, vendors shall pay a special event vending fee. Sorry.
Is this the fifth point down, that safety service director?
Under 3, it's the first one.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
So the third line,
pay a special-
Safety Director, semicolon, B,
Okay.
vendors shall pay a special event vending fee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend as stated. That has been provided to the clerk. Further discussion on the amendment. Member
Go ahead.
Weil, or Patterson, go ahead. Your-
Well, I'll
it's
explain
your-
first,
yeah,
and then I think that might
It's your
work better.
amendment, yes.
The reason that I felt that this was the best course of action for us to take is if you look at all the figures in terms of the vending, our A vendors pay $750 a year for their license. We have 4 vendors with those licenses. 2 of them use them regularly, the other 2 we never see. Then we have B vendors, and we have 4 of those that we almost never see. And those people pay $50 a year. And so even with the $150 assessment for B vendors, they would still be paying only $200 to have a spot for Halloween, as well as any other time they might want to go up there. Now, during the day, they would put money in the meter. However, on Halloween, it's evenings, and so that doesn't even enter into the picture. Our new unlicensed vendors will pay $500 for that night, a set fee. To me, this seemed like a reasonable change to make so that the idea of people taking a B vending license just to hold a Halloween spot for $50 is what we really want to get rid of. And so this, to me, seems the most equitable solution.
One other clarification, if this comes off the table at third, gets amended, it goes back to first reading. For it to become
It would have to be
viable and
suspended.
Well, and you may wish to consider an emergency clause.
Well, let's see if the amendment passes first.
It doesn't. It wouldn't need the emergency clause.
It won't be
Not if
effective
you
until
adopt it this
next-
evening.
Well, are you going to suspend it tonight?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We're living in a dream world.
How many fee vendors did you say there were?
Well, the list that we were given, there were 4.
Member Weil.
I thought there's a total of like 8 bee vendors entirely.
That was
Yes.
what we received.
And this is what's on the back of bee vendors.
There are only 4 that operate. You're right, there are. And we have the capability of having 10.
Okay. It's, I don't, how much Halloween costs, I don't see anything that is in favor of reducing how much income we get from this. Last year we did the 10% gross, it was poorly collected. We've dropped the extended size of the buggies that you can put there because of the incapability of the code to actually prosecute or track down people who have multiple licenses and sitting in one place. Dropping the Bs, the As are paying $750, but they don't have to pay for parking on those spots there. I don't see any reason why we should be doing this.
Member Bain.
Could you review the history of this? When initially just look at the slide and say, when did we start talking about this? We had it in committee meeting, we went over it and talked about it. Then what came next? We read it once.
On July 5th, it was the first reading. It was amended July 7th. It was tabled
At-
July 18th.
So that was the second reading, and we amended it because Gary Hunter suggested it. We didn't amend it any other way. Okay, so we had in June a meeting in which we discussed all of this. Sometimes it seems to me we were worried about whether vending is equitable in the city of Athens, which is a different question. Sometimes we aren't. Right now, I just think that we did collect the money last year, some money, and I think we should continue to do it to offset the costs of our porta potties and other things of that sort. And I know that this has been a relatively divisive issue, but I think we just need to vote it up or out, and then fix the problem, for goodness sake. It's been since 1987, and it has Rick's name on it, the old ordinance. And it's a very contentious issue, and I actually, once, I was pretty torqued on, in July, and so I went back and figured out what the benefits were of A and B, and I circulated it to my fellow council members. And I intend to bring it up sometime soon, because I think there is a substantial discrepancy. And I think that Jim Sand said to me at that time, in the middle of my torqueness, that he would like to have some way to check it. And we don't really know who uses it and who doesn't use it unless we go down there and check every day. And so I asked the mayor, and he said, yeah, they could start putting it on the meter readers. And so we can change it in the future. But I didn't realize it was going to come up when I brought it up in June. And I only brought it up in June because no one else was bringing it up, and I wanted to see Halloween covered. So that's what I think. I would like your support on not changing it and collecting money. It's always bad to reverse money collection, in my opinion.
Further comments?
From council.
First time comments from members of council? Member Weil.
Okay, the data I have on the Halloween was costing us $63,000. Any way we recoup that would be, in my mind, something positive. I mean, I look at $63,000, and that would pay, let's see, 5 years would pay for rebuilding Jeff Hill. You know, we can use it elsewhere. There's lots of things we could use that for besides having a party. And again, I know everybody claims it's a great moneymaker, it's great for everybody, but those numbers don't show up here in front of me. The negative 63 shows up here.
Other comments? We have a motion and a second to amend, I believe is what we're up to, ordinance 6905. All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Please show of hands. 1, 2. Those opposed? 2, 3, 4. The amendment dies.
Mr. President, I move to adopt 06905.
Second.
Motion and a second to adopt ordinance 6905 as previously written.
It would be the third reading.
Are we suspending the rules and?
No, it's
a
third
We're-
reading.
We're adopting it at third reading, okay. We removed it from the table at third reading, and we have a motion and a second to adopt it at
Excuse
that,
me.
in that form. Member Sands,
Did you all decide, does it need an emergency at this point? to-
not if
we're
it's
okay?
adopted
If
tonight.
it's
it's got
adopted
30
tonight, it'll
days.
make it,
Yeah. Further comments? Member Weil?
I'll probably vote against it, just because I voted against the other two ones. It's still costing us more money, and it's yet to be, it's a barely controlled riot.
Okay.
As much as I like it, sitting up here, and I've attended many of them, sitting up here, and realize I've gone to safety teams, I've been up there in costume, but again, sitting up here, I have to look at the money it costs the city.
Point well taken. Other comments?
Can I ask that in an upcoming committee meeting, that separate from this issue, the Halloween vending, that we review vending as a whole?
Sure.
And put it on the.
I would see, certainly if it doesn't happen soon, that would certainly be a goal of the next session of council, and probably given a department status. Yeah, I would see that happening. Further comments? Member Patterson?
My comment is that the reason that I moved to go ahead and vote on this issue, although I clearly don't agree with the ordinance the way written, but we must have vending ordinance for Halloween. Otherwise, we could not accept the vendors at all, and so it's in our best interest to pass this.
Okay. Further comments? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 6905?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
The ordinance passes 5-1. Okay, let's see. Member Patterson, I believe you have another recommendation for us.
Mr. President, I move to accept two appointments to the Arts Commission. A new one, who is Amanda Buchanan. I did put her resume and cover letter in your mailboxes. I think she's an outstanding potential member, has worked as an artist and lives on our west side. Works at the Final Fridays in Nelsonville, as well as our Sunday markets, and has been a very active member of the arts community. And the other one is a renewal of the appointment of Susan Green, who is one of the original members. Both are 2-year terms.
We have a motion
No,
Do we
you
have a
need a
second?
second.
and a second to recommend the appointment of Amanda Buchanan and Susan Green to the Arts Commission. Further discussion? All those in favor of approving the appointments?
Aye.
Those opposed? Both people have now been appointed to the Arts Commission. Member Phillips?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the use of the groundskeeper's house to house Hurricane Katrina evacuees.
Second.
I think most people are aware that there's been a really strong grassroots volunteer effort to collect supplies for hurricane relief, and we received a request from the Ohio Municipal League for cities to look at what they can do to help with this. And in the search for housing for one of these families, the mayor and I had a conversation last Friday about the fact that the old groundskeeper's house out in front of the rec center has been vacant for a while. And we took a look at it, and it really just needs to be cleaned up, and it will be habitable. So we'd like to be able to house this family there for a while they get back on their feet.
Is there further discussion? Member Weil?
Do we have a duration of this, time length?
We have not worked out the details yet. I think that the committee would really like to see it be a minimum of 6 months, but, it could go as long as a year. We don't really have any plans for that house at this time. It was being used as the base for trail maintenance at Sells Park, and at least for the winter, John Nouse is getting moved into the pool locker room to do his sign making and stuff for trail maintenance. So we've managed to accommodate the only use that the house is being put to right now.
Okay.
Further discussion? Member
It
Sands?
seems like an excellent idea. I'm wondering, do we have any idea of what the cost associated might be?
Nicole,
We
we're
pay
really looking at our
utilities,
utilities. Which we pay anyway.
et cetera.
We're currently paying utilities on that house. There probably will be some increase, and we can work with the committee to make sure that that's covered fairly. We haven't really worked out the details. They are currently staying at the AmeriHost, and they're able to stay there
So we
through
have a
Thursday.
package
So,
identified.
yeah. So this is just something we need to get rolling, and we can iron out something that looks like a lease agreement if we need to. This is just to, acknowledge that council discussed it and is generally an approval.
And I wasn't even suggesting that we needed to ask these people to pay, I just was, so we'd have some idea.
Yeah.
So,
We don't know the details right
Okay.
now. This is just something that we can get moving, and we will work it out.
We have a motion and a second to use the groundskeeper's house for the stated purpose. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? It has been adopted. Any other announcements and other business? Committee meetings next week. Member Patterson.
Art and Recreation needs another meeting to finish our discussion concerning the Fountain Plus.
Okay. Member
Trans-
Weil.
Transportation Committee to cover, we were approached by, I think it was Tabs Taxi, wanting to know about the BCI stuff, as well as I want to talk about putting an assessment for improvements at Jeff Hill, what it takes to do that.
Okay. Other items? Member Bain.
City services, and right now we'll put down miscellaneous till I talk to the mayor.
Okay. Member Sands.
Mr. President, I'd like to schedule a Development Committee meeting. Planning Development, we have a request for another lot split we'll discuss. Further, I'd like to talk to council about possibly scheduling a committee meeting with regards to the proposed retirement center development on Stimson Avenue. It's been suggested by Councilmember Bain and maybe some other council members that we might want to have that discussion on a night other than a Monday night, because our Mondays are pretty full, and we'd anticipate this discussion to be fairly long. So I'm proposing a Wednesday in October. The first Wednesday is October 5th, second Wednesday is October 12th. I've checked with the government channel, they'd be able to handle us either night. The NCRC folk would be able to come either night. Do we have, I know one preference to the 12th.
I can't make it on the 5th.
She won't be here the 5th, so that's, we'd like to certainly have as many council members and make it available. This would be a time when I would hope that we would discuss all the issues and come out of there with an ordinance that we would then bring up for 3 readings. That's the goal here. So I have a suggestion for the 12th,
12th is okay by me.
both evenings. Sarah has class on Wednesday.
Every Wednesday.
I know this can go on forever trying to fit everybody in. Is there a
The 13th?
Tuesday or Thursday? Is
The
that?
13th?
Excuse me?
Could we go for the 13th?
Wednesday,
Thursday.
13th?
Can we try that?
That's the night of the deal.
Well, that'll speed it up.
There's a conflict that night.
For some of us, yeah.
Or just about every council member.
How about, let's go for the 12th. Sarah will try to
Sarah can
convince her
watch my
professor that
tapes.
this is a good life lesson. 7 o'clock.
You can bring the class.
Yeah, bring the class. 7 o'clock, Wednesday, October 12th. And we'll make that as public as possible. So it'll be here in council chambers.
Other meeting,
Mr.
yes.
President,
Member Phillips.
with Member Tamke not here, I'm not sure if we should have a finance committee, at least with miscellaneous, because we may need to start talking about the process for the budget.
I think that'd be a good idea to schedule it, and if we need to yank it, we could.
Okay.
Any other announcements or other business? One jam-packed week, next week. Next on our agenda is an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services not covered on tonight's agenda. Are there any members of the community that would like to address council tonight? Please come forward. Council rules provide that you state your name, address, and up to 3 minutes of comments.
Hi, my name is Andrew Bittner. I live at 9 Morris Road, and I'm a university student. I travel on North Congress Street quite often, probably once a day, in my motorcycle, sometimes in a car. And I've noticed that sometimes as a pedestrian as well, if I'm crossing the intersection of North Congress and West Washington, sometimes cars are speeding up North Congress because of the light situation. It seems that you always catch a red light if you're headed down North Congress towards Bromley, because the light shuts down on you real quick, and the only way to make it is if you speed up to about 35 miles an hour. So I think as a safety issue, if we could extend that light, but by my calculations, 4 or 5 seconds, it would be a lot safer for pedestrians, as well as it would make traffic move a lot smoother for people that are coming through that light.
Thank you very much, Paul.
I'll try relaying it to Ron Lucas.
Yeah,
Maybe the mayor
and
will.
I noticed that the mayor is taking notes about what you're talking about, and that is usually how comments such as yours are passed along to the people that will take a look at it. And thank you very much for your comment. We will take it under advisement and see if it makes sense.
Great. Thank you very much.
Other comments? Member Weil.
Since Rick's making a note to the street department, I've had the same complaint on Richland heading south at Schaefer and South Green Drive. They said they can only get 3 cars through per light change. Now, I went there last Sunday and counted about 15 seconds per light change, which seems to work for every one except that one. I was approached by 3 different secretaries in one office. And if they're not happy, nothing's going to get.
Why even those
Yes.
secretaries get
That's
together?
right.
I don't-
However, that light varies.
It does, because all the
It has-
loops and
right.
the pedestrian crossing.
Sometimes 2 cars can get through, but other times 10.
Yeah, I was timing
So
it
it
between.
is connected with something, I'm sure, but
It's-
it does vary.
Yeah, it's got a series of loops. I know it's well, timed in one sense, but it's quite fast. I think I timed it as little as 15 seconds and as long as 24, 35, something like that. Seems to be multiples of 15 somehow. But it depends how fast I can hit my stopwatch.
Thank you. Other comments? Anyone else wishing to address council? The next item on our agenda is an executive session for city council to discuss with the law director ongoing labor negotiations. We will take until 8:30 for anyone before the city that would like to talk to any of the council members directly. At 8:30, I'm going to ask that everyone leave the room so that we can go into executive session and discuss what we need to. I do need a motion if I could
I
ask you
move
to
we
bear
go
with
into
us.
executive session,
Okay.
including, I assume, law director, the mayor, Kathy. Is that it, or anybody else? Okay. Aye.
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 Say aye, you guys.
Aye.
Okay. That will be all for tonight. Thank you.